The orange safety cone was sitting directly in front of the sealed steel gate, and someone had zip-tied a laminated sign to the chain-link fence that read, "Historic Silver Creek Mine Trail. Guided hikes every Saturday at 10 a.m." I stood there in the cold morning air, holding my coffee, staring at the sign, and I did not move for a full minute. The gate was mine. The land was mine. The mine entrance behind that gate had been sealed under a federal reclamation file since 1987, and the only people who knew that were me, the county, and the man who had taught me to weld that gate shut in the first place, my father. The sign was new. The cone was new. The tire tracks in the mud leading up to the gate were new. And the HOA had not asked me a single question about any of it. I set my coffee down on the hood of my truck, pulled out my phone, and took a photograph of the sign, the cone, the gate, and the tire tracks. Then I took a photograph of the small metal tag welded to the gate frame, the one stamped with the reclamation file number. Then I walked back to my truck, sat in the driver's seat, and called my brother. "They put a sign on the mine gate," I said. "They're running tours." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my brother said, "Do they know what's behind that gate?" "No," I said, "but they're about to." Before I explain what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's out there listening to this kind of quiet, patient, paperwork-based destruction. Because that's what this story is. It's not a story about yelling. It's not a story about calling the cops on day one. It's a story about a woman named Karen Whitmore, the president of the Silver Creek Estates HOA History Committee, who decided that my family's sealed mine entrance was a community heritage asset. And it's a story about what happens when you market a hazardous, federally documented mine as a tourist attraction without checking the reclamation file. My name is Lena Marchetti. I'm 38 years old. I'm a civil engineer, specifically a geotechnical engineer, who spent 12 years working for the State Division of Mining Reclamation before I burned out and went into private consulting. I know what a sealed mine looks like. I know what a reclamation file contains. And I know exactly what happens when someone tampers with a gate that has been legally sealed under a federal reclamation order. The property in question is 47 acres of forested land on the eastern edge of Silver Creek Estates, a subdivision that was built in the early 2000s around a cluster of old mining claims. My father, Dominic Marchetti, bought the 47 acres in 1985, 2 years before the mine on the property was officially sealed. He had been a miner himself, third generation, and he knew the Silver Creek vein was played out. He bought the land not for the mine, but for the timber, the creek, and the quiet. He built a small cabin near the creek, and he welded that gate across the mine entrance himself, using steel beams and a locking mechanism that required a key the size of my palm. He died in 2019. The land passed to me and my brother, Anthony. Anthony lives in Oregon now, working as a fisheries biologist, and he has never wanted anything to do with the property except to know that it's safe. I'm the one who pays the taxes, maintains the cabin, walks the boundary lines, and keeps the gate locked. The HOA has always known the mine entrance exists. It's visible from one of the hiking trails that winds through the common areas, a trail that technically crosses onto my property for about 60 feet before reaching the gate. That 60-foot encroachment had been a point of friction for years. The previous HOA board had acknowledged it was an informal trail, not a recorded easement, and they'd posted a small sign asking hikers to stay on the main path. But the previous board had been replaced 18 months ago by a new group, and Karen Whitmore had taken over the history committee with what I can only describe as theatrical enthusiasm. Karen was the kind of HOA president who wore linen blazers to board meetings, carried a leather-bound binder with color-coded tabs, and referred to herself as the steward of Silver Creek's heritage. She had lived in the subdivision for 6 years. She had never worked in mining, never worked in land management, never worked in anything except corporate marketing before she retired early and decided that running the HOA was her new full-time job. I had met her exactly 3 times before the sign appeared. The first time was at a board meeting where she proposed renaming all the streets after historic local figures. The second time was when she knocked on my door to ask if I would consider donating the mine entrance to the HOA for interpretive purposes. I told her no. I told her the mine was sealed. It was dangerous, and it was not open to the public. She smiled, nodded, and said she understood. The third time was when she left a flyer in my mailbox advertising the first Silver Creek Heritage Hike, which included a stop at the historic Marchetti mine entrance. I called her immediately. She did not answer. I left a message explaining that the mine was private property, sealed, and not part of any trail. She did not call back. That was 6 weeks before the orange cone and the laminated sign appeared. After I took the photographs, I did not remove the sign. I did not move the cone. I did not call Karen. I drove back down the gravel road to my cabin, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. I pulled up the county assessor's parcel map and confirmed what I already knew. The mine entrance, the gate, and the 60 feet of trail leading to it were all inside parcel 14-722-003, which was recorded in my name and my brother's name. Then I pulled up the reclamation file. The Silver Creek Mine, also known as Misha ID 48-01234, had been sealed under a federal reclamation plan approved by the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement in 1987. The file was 68 pages long. It included a site map, a closure report, a geotechnical stability assessment, and a legal notice stating that any unauthorized access, tampering, or disturbance of the sealed entrance would trigger mandatory reporting to the county reclamation officer and could result in civil penalties of up to $10,000 per violation. The gate was not just a gate. It was a legally mandated safety barrier. The sign Karen had zip-tied to the fence was not just a sign. It was an invitation to violate a federal reclamation order. I printed the entire file. I placed it in a manila folder. Then I wrote a single sentence on a sticky note and attached it to the front of the folder. Karen Whitmore, Silver Creek Estates HOA, unauthorized mine access. That folder became the first item in what I started calling the evidence box. The second item arrived 3 days later. It was a video. My neighbor, a retired school teacher named Margaret Okonkwo, texted me a link to a YouTube channel called Abandoned Quest. The channel had about 40,000 subscribers, and the most recent video was titled, Secret Mine Found Behind HOA Neighborhood. Can we get inside? The thumbnail showed a young man in a headlamp standing in front of my gate, holding a crowbar. I watched the video with my coffee going cold beside me. The YouTuber, a kid in his early 20s with the screen name Quest Ranger, had filmed himself hiking up the trail, following the laminated sign, and arriving at the gate. He narrated the whole thing in an excited whisper. So the HOA here has this historic mine trail, right? And they say this gate has been sealed for like 100 years. But look at this lock. It's old, it's rusty. I bet we can get it open. He pulled out the crowbar. He wedged it between the gate frame and the steel mesh. He pried. The gate did not open. The lock held. But the steel mesh bent, and the sound of metal scraping against metal echoed through the forest. I paused the video. I took a screenshot of the frame where the crowbar was visibly wedged into the gate. I took a screenshot of the laminated sign visible in the background. I took a screenshot of the video title. Then I called the county reclamation officer. His name was Raymond Delgado. He had been the reclamation officer for the Silver Creek District for 22 years. He had known my father. He had signed off on the final closure report in 1987. When he answered the phone, I said, "Ray, someone's running tours to the Silver Creek mine entrance. A YouTuber just tried to pry the gate open. The video's online." There was a pause. Then Ray said, "Send me the link." I sent him the link. I sent him the photographs of the sign and the cone. I sent him the parcel map. I sent him the reclamation file number. Then I asked him the question I already knew the answer to. What happens if someone breaches that gate? Ray's voice was flat. If that gate is compromised, the entire reclamation status is in violation. The county has to inspect. The federal office has to be notified. The property owner, that's you, could be held liable if someone gets hurt. And the person who organized the access could face civil penalties, criminal charges if there's evidence of knowing violation. And the HOA's insurance would almost certainly deny coverage because the activity was not authorized. I wrote all of that down. I added it to the folder. Then I asked, "Can you come out and do an inspection?" "I'll be there Thursday," Ray said. "Don't touch the gate, don't touch the sign. Let them keep doing what they're doing." "That's the plan," I said. Thursday was 5 days away. In those 5 days, Karen Whitmore made 4 more mistakes. The first mistake was the email. On Monday morning, I received a message from the HOA's official email address, signed by Karen Whitmore, with the subject line, Silver Creek Heritage Trail, Community Update. The email announced that the History Committee had partnered with local historians to develop a self-guided interpretive trail that included the historic Marquette Mine entrance, a fascinating remnant of Silver Creek's mining heritage. The email included a map, The map showed the trail route, the mine entrance, and a dotted line labeled Future Interpretive Center. The dotted line was drawn directly over my cabin. I read the email 3 times. Then I forwarded it to my personal email, printed it, and added it to the folder. The second mistake was the Facebook post. That same afternoon, Margaret sent me a screenshot from the Silver Creek Estates community Facebook group. Karen had posted a photo of the mine gate, with the laminated sign clearly visible, along with a caption that read, "So proud of our history committee for bringing Silver Creek's heritage to life. Join us this Saturday for our first official heritage hike. We'll be visiting the mine entrance, sharing stories of the miners who built this community, and taking photos for the HOA newsletter. All residents welcome." The post had 47 likes and 12 comments. One comment said, "Is this on private property?" Karen had replied, "The mine is a community heritage asset, and the trail access has been used by residents for years. The History Committee has full authority to develop interpretive programming." I took a screenshot. I printed it. I added it to the folder. The third mistake was the voicemail. On Tuesday evening, Karen called me. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was 2 minutes long. She started with a cheerful tone, then shifted to something sharper when she realized I wasn't picking up. "Lena, this is Karen Whitmore from the HOA History Committee. I wanted to personally invite you to our heritage hike this Saturday. I know we've had our differences about the mine entrance, but I really think you'll see how much the community appreciates this resource once you see the turnout. The board has fully approved the trail program, and we've already had interest from the County Historical Society. I'd hate for you to be the one person standing in the way of something that's clearly good for everyone. Call me back." I did not call her back. I saved the voicemail. I transcribed it. I added the transcription to the folder. The fourth mistake was the flyer. On Wednesday morning, I drove up to the gate and found that someone had replaced the laminated sign with a larger, professionally printed banner. The banner read, "Silver Creek Historic Mine. Guided tours every Saturday. Sponsored by Silver Creek Estates, HOA." Beneath the banner, someone had placed a small wooden podium with a guest book. The guest book had 3 names in it already. I photographed the banner. I photographed the podium. I photographed the guest book. Then I opened the guest book and photographed the names. One of them was Karen Whitmore, tour guide. I closed the guest book. I left the banner. I left the podium. I drove back to the cabin and called my brother. "Anthony," I said, "the HOA is selling tours to the mine. They put up a banner. They have a guest book. Karen signed herself in as the tour guide." Anthony was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Does she know about the reclamation file?" "She's never asked," I said. "She's never asked about the gate, the seal, the liability, the federal order, or the fact that Dad welded that gate shut because the mine was classified as a hazardous site. She's never asked me anything. What are you going to do?" "Ray Delgado is coming tomorrow," I said. "He's going to inspect the gate. He's going to see the banner, the podium, the guest book, and the video of the YouTuber trying to pry it open. And then he's going to write a report. And then I'm going to let the report do what reports do." Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. Ray Delgado pulled up in his county truck at 8:15 a.m., carrying a clipboard, a camera, and a thick file folder that I recognized immediately. It was the original reclamation file for the Silver Creek mine. I met him at the gate. He stood there for a long time, looking at the banner, the podium, the guest book, and the bent steel mesh where the YouTuber had pried. He took photographs. He wrote notes. He measured the gap in the mesh with a tape measure. Then he turned to me and said, "The gate has been tampered with. The seal is compromised. I'm going to have to file a violation report with the county and the federal office." "Who gets the violation?" I asked. "The property owner is responsible for maintaining the seal," Ray said. "But in this case, the property owner is also the one reporting the unauthorized access, and the evidence clearly shows that the access was organized by a third party without the owner's consent. So the violation will be issued to the HOA as the organizing entity, and to Karen Whitmore personally as the individual who signed as tour guide." He paused. "Lena, this is serious. If the federal office decides to pursue penalties, we're looking at fines, potential criminal charges for knowing endangerment, and a mandatory resealing of the mine at the HOA's expense. The resealing alone could cost $30,000 to $50,000. I nodded. "What do you need from me?" "I need a written statement," Ray said. "I need copies of all the evidence you've collected, and I need you to not warn the HOA before the Saturday hike." I looked at him. "You want them to run the hike?" "I want them to run the hike. Ray said, because I'm going to be there, and I'm going to bring a sheriff's deputy, and I'm going to serve the violation notice in person, in front of everyone, while Karen Whitmore is standing at that podium with her guest book. I felt something cold and quiet settle in my chest. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was the feeling of a door closing, a lock turning, a mechanism that had been set in motion and could not be stopped. Okay, I said. I'll have the statement ready by Friday. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote the statement. I included the timeline, the first flyer, the phone call she never returned, the laminated sign, the orange cone, the YouTube video, the email with the map showing my cabin as a future interpretive center, the Facebook post, the voicemail, the banner, the podium, the guest book. I attached photographs, screenshots, and the transcribed voicemail. I included the reclamation file number, the parcel number, and a copy of my deed. I printed 3 copies, one for Ray, one for the sheriff, one for my folder. On Friday, I drove to the county office and hand-delivered the statement to Ray. He read it in front of me, nodding slowly. "This is thorough," he said. "I was raised by a miner," I said. "We document everything." Saturday morning arrived. The heritage hike was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:30, I parked my truck on the main road, walked up the trail, and positioned myself about 50 feet from the gate, behind a stand of Douglas firs. I had my phone, my folder, and a thermos of coffee. I was not hiding. I was waiting. The residents started arriving around 9:45. I counted 23 people. Some were couples. Some were families with children. Some were older residents carrying walking sticks and wearing Silver Creek Estates HOA branded hats. They gathered around the podium, chatting, taking photos of the banner, signing the guest book. Karen Whitmore arrived at 9:55. She was wearing a khaki vest over a white linen shirt, a pair of hiking boots that looked like they had never touched dirt, and a wide-brimmed hat. She carried a clipboard and a portable speaker. She set the speaker on the podium, tapped the microphone, and began. "Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first official Silver Creek Historic Mine Heritage Hike. I'm Karen Whitmore, chair of the HOA History Committee, and I am so thrilled to see all of you here today. This mine entrance is one of the oldest surviving structures in Silver Creek Estates, and it represents the hard work and sacrifice of the miners who built this community. We are standing on history." She paused for applause. A few people clapped. "Now, I know there's been some confusion about access to this site," Karen continued. "But I want to be very clear. The History Committee has full authority to develop interpretive programming on community heritage assets. This mine belongs to all of us. It's part of our shared story, and no one person has the right to keep it locked away." More applause. A man near the front said, "Is it safe?" Karen smiled. "Absolutely. The gate is secure. The mine has been sealed for decades. There's no danger at all." That was when Ray Delgado stepped out of the trees. He was wearing his county uniform, carrying his clipboard, and he was accompanied by a sheriff's deputy named Officer Chen. They walked directly toward the podium. The crowd parted. Karen's smile flickered. "Can I help you?" she said. "Karen Whitmore?" Ray said. "Yes? I'm Raymond Delgado, County Reclamation Officer for the Silver Creek District. This is Officer Chen from the Sheriff's Department. I'm here to serve a violation notice regarding unauthorized access to a federally sealed mine entrance." The crowd went silent. Karen's face went pale. "I don't understand," she said. "This is a community heritage site. The HOA History Committee." "Ma'am," Ray said, "this mine entrance was sealed under a federal reclamation order in 1987. The gate is a legally mandated safety barrier. Tampering with it, organizing access to it, or marketing it as a tourist attraction without authorization from the property owner and the county reclamation office is a violation of state and federal law." He held up the violation notice. "This notice is being issued to the Silver Creek Estates Homeowners Association, and to you personally, as the individual who organized and led the unauthorized access. The violations include 1. Unauthorized disturbance of a sealed mine entrance. 2. Organizing public access to a hazardous site without safety permits. 3. Failure to notify the County Reclamation Office of intended activity. And 4. Tampering with a safety barrier, as evidenced by the bent gate mesh documented in a YouTube video posted 3 days ago." Karen's mouth opened and closed. "A YouTube video? Quest Ranger?" I said, stepping out from behind the trees. He posted a video of himself trying to pry the gate open with a crowbar. The video has 40,000 views. The HOA sign is clearly visible in the background. Every head turned toward me. Karen's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the exact moment she realized that I had not been ignoring her. I had been documenting her. "You," she said. "You did this." "No," I said. "You did this. You put up the sign. You sent the email. You posted on Facebook. You signed the guest book as tour guide. You told everyone the mine was safe. You never asked me. You never checked the reclamation file. You never called the county. You just decided it was yours." Officer Chen stepped forward. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the podium. The hike is canceled. Everyone needs to return to the main road." The residents started murmuring. A woman near the back said, "Wait, the mine isn't safe?" "The mine is sealed because it's hazardous," Ray said. "The shaft behind that gate drops 200 feet vertically. The air inside contains elevated levels of radon and carbon dioxide. The timbers supporting the entrance were rated as unstable in 1987, and they have not been inspected since. If that gate had been breached, anyone who entered would have been at risk of collapse, asphyxiation, or fatal falls." The woman turned to Karen. "You brought my children here." Karen's face crumpled. I didn't know any of that." "You didn't ask," I said. The crowd dispersed slowly. Officer Chen took statements from several residents. Ray posted an official closure notice on the gate, replacing the HOA banner. Karen stood off to the side, her clipboard hanging limp in her hand, her hat askew. She did not look at me. She did not speak to me. She just stood there while her heritage hike collapsed around her. The aftermath took weeks to fully unfold, but the first consequences landed within days. The HOA board held an emergency meeting on Monday night. I attended. So did 47 residents, which was more than had ever attended any HOA meeting in the history of Silver Creek Estates. The board president, a man named Gerald Fincher, who had apparently been letting Karen run the history committee without oversight, opened the meeting by reading a prepared statement. The board was not fully aware of the extent of the history committee's activities regarding the mine entrance. "We are conducting an internal review." Margaret Okonkwo stood up. "Karen told us the mine was safe. She told us the board had approved everything. She told us the property owner had given permission. Was any of that true?" Gerald hesitated. "The board approved the concept of a heritage trail. We did not approve specific site access. We were not informed that the mine entrance was on private property or that it was sealed under a federal order." "So Karen lied," Margaret said. "Karen presented incomplete information," Gerald said. "She lied," Margaret said again. "And my grandchildren were at that gate." The room erupted. Residents started shouting questions. Someone demanded to see the board's meeting minutes. Someone else demanded to know why the HOA's insurance hadn't been consulted. A man in the back stood up and identified himself as Thomas Evers, the HOA's insurance representative. He looked deeply unhappy. "I want to be clear," Thomas said. "The HOA's general liability policy does not cover activities organized on private property without the owner's consent. It does not cover access to hazardous sites, and it does not cover violations of federal reclamation orders. If the county or the federal office pursues penalties, the HOA will be paying out of pocket, and if anyone had been injured, the HOA would have been personally liable, potentially beyond the limits of any coverage we could have obtained." Quote. The room went quiet. Then Gerald said, "How much are we talking about?" Thomas flipped through a stack of papers. "The resealing of the gate alone is estimated at $35,000 to $50,000. The civil penalties for the violations could range from $10,000 to $50,000 per violation, and there are 4 violations listed. If the federal office decides to pursue criminal charges for knowing endangerment, the legal fees alone could bankrupt the HOA's reserves." Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Karen was not at the meeting. She had sent an email to the board earlier that day, resigning from the history committee, effective immediately. The board voted to dissolve the history committee entirely. They voted to pay for new fencing and signage around the mine entrance, at a cost of $12,000, to be installed by a licensed contractor under the supervision of the County Reclamation Office. They voted to issue a formal written apology to me and my brother, and they voted to amend the HOA's covenants to explicitly prohibit any future board or committee from organizing activities on private property without notarized written consent from the owner. The vote was unanimous. I sat in the back row, my folder on my lap, and I did not say a word. After the meeting, Gerald approached me. He looked exhausted. "Ms. Marchetti," he said, "I want to apologize personally. The board should have verified the property status before approving anything. We relied on Karen's representations, and that was a failure of oversight." "It was," I said. "Is there anything else we can do?" I opened my folder. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a copy of the Reclamation file's legal notice, the one that stated unauthorized access could trigger liability for the organizing entity. I had highlighted the relevant paragraph. "You can make sure this never happens again," I said, "and you can pay for the gate repair, and you can stay off my land." He nodded. "We will." 2 weeks later, the County Reclamation Office completed its inspection and issued its final report. The report confirmed that the gate had been tampered with, but not breached, that the mine entrance remained sealed, and that the HOA's unauthorized activities had created a public safety risk. The report recommended civil penalties of $40,000 against the HOA and $15,000 against Karen Whitmore personally. The federal office accepted the recommendations. The HOA paid. Karen, I heard later, hired a lawyer and tried to fight the personal penalty. She argued that she had been acting in her capacity as History Committee chair and that the HOA should be solely responsible. The federal office disagreed. The penalty stood. The YouTuber, Quest Ranger, took down the video after receiving a cease and desist letter from the county attorney's office. He posted a follow-up video titled, "I almost died in a sealed mine," not clickbait, which was mostly him apologizing and telling his viewers to never, ever try to open sealed mine entrances. It got 600,000 views. My brother called me the day the new fence was installed. "How's the land?" he asked. "Quiet," I said. "The way Dad wanted it." "You think he'd be proud?" I looked out the window at the trees, the creek, the new fence with its bright yellow warning signs, and the gate that my father had welded shut with his own hands. "I think he'd say I handled it the way he would have," I said, "with paperwork." Anthony laughed. "That sounds like Dad." The new fence was 8 feet tall, chain link with privacy slats, and it ran along the entire 60-foot encroachment where the informal trail had crossed onto my property. The county reclamation office had installed a new sign on the gate, a metal placard that read, "Warning, sealed mine entrance, hazardous conditions, unauthorized access, prohibited by federal law, violators subject to civil and criminal penalties." Below that, a smaller sign read, "Private property, no trespassing, parcel 1422-003. The HOA paid for all of it. The History Committee was never reconstituted. Karen Whitmore sold her house 6 months later and moved to Arizona. I heard from Margaret that she tried to join the HOA board in her new community and was rejected after someone from Silver Creek Estates sent an anonymous email with a link to the county reclamation report. The guest book, the banner, the laminated sign, and the orange cone all ended up in a storage box in my cabin. I kept them, not as trophies, as reminders that some people will look at a locked gate and see an obstacle. Other people will look at a locked gate and see a reason. My father was the second kind. He locked that gate because he knew what was behind it. He knew the drop, the gas, the unstable rock, the darkness that had no bottom. He knew that some doors are closed for a reason, and that the people who try to open them without asking are not explorers. They're liabilities. Karen Whitmore never understood that. She looked at a sealed mine and saw a story she could tell. She looked at a locked gate and saw a prop for her heritage hike. She looked at my silence and saw permission. She was wrong about all of it. The morning after the new fence was completed, I walked up to the gate with my coffee. The sun was coming through the trees. The creek was running high from the spring melt, and the air smelled like wet earth and pine. I stood at the fence and looked at the gate, the new sign, the fresh gravel where the podium had been. The guest book was gone. The banner was gone. The orange cone was gone. The only thing left was the gate, the lock, and the small metal tag with the reclamation file number. I touched the tag. It was cold, it was solid, it was still there. Some people think authority comes from being loud. They think if they print enough banners, send enough emails, post enough Facebook updates, and say the word community enough times, the facts will rearrange themselves around their ambition. But property doesn't care about ambition. Deeds don't care about Facebook likes. Reclamation files don't care about heritage hikes. The record was there the whole time. It had been there since 1987, sitting in a county office, waiting for someone to read it. Karen never did. I did, and that made all the difference. I finished my coffee, walked back to the cabin, and put the folder back in the file cabinet. The evidence box was full now. The case was closed. The gate was locked, and the land was quiet again, the way it was supposed to be.